Hello there. In this video we'll go through another Activity on Node project network that includes drawing the diagram, identifying the critical path, and also drawing a Gantt chart for the project. So here's the data that we have for a factory. At this time we have 7 activities with the time measured in hours. We can see right from the get-go that activities A and B have no immediate predecessors, so both of those could start at the same time. What I've done is pre-populated my nodes with the times to begin with. So let's start to draw this diagram. So we'll start with A and B, and then we see activity C comes off of activity A, and activity D comes off of both B and C. So we put activity C about there, and activity D about there, and we start to draw our lines. C comes after A, and D comes after both B and C. Then we have activity E, which comes after activity B. So put this one sort of down here. Activity F comes after activity D. And then activity G comes off of both E and F. So it'll look something like that. Now notice again that activity E comes after both B and C. So when we join them, we have to make sure that we include B and C. And then activity F comes after activity D. Now if we joined it just like that, you see we've got a crossover, and that's okay to have a crossover, but usually what we do in operations is we kind of do a little hop like that. Not as pretty as the other ones, but it gets the job done. And then activity G comes after both E and F. Now since G is the last node, and it's the only one at the end, we don't need to have an end node. But because A and B both start at the same time, we want to include a start node at the very beginning. So that's what our diagram should look like here. If we list the paths, you can see that we have A, C, D, E, F, G. That's a long one. And 6 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7.7 plus 4 is 28.7 hours. The next path is A, C, E, and G. And when we add those together, that's 19.5 hours. We have another path that's B, D, F, G. That's a total of 24.9 hours. And then we have another path that's just B, E, G for a total of 15.7. So what we see here is that of all these paths, the longest path is A, C, D, F, G for a total of 28.7 hours. This is the critical path because it takes the longest amount of time. So we've actually finished requirements A and B to draw the network diagram and identify the path. And of course, at the same time, we've determined that the projected length of the project is 28.7 hours. The last thing we want to do is draw a Gantt chart for the project. And so I'm just going to paste one in here because it's going to be quicker that way. So as you can see here, we have a line for each activity. So we start with A, and we know that A takes 6 hours. So this endpoint here is at about 6 hours. B starts at 0 and takes 7.2 hours. So this point here is 7.2 hours. Activity C cannot start until activity A is finished. So that's why these line up. So activity C starts at the 6 hour point and then takes a total of 5 hours to complete to finish at the 11th hour. And if you were to draw these to scale, that would be about here. It's the 11th hour. Then activities D and E cannot start until activity C is finished. So all of these start at hour 11. Activity D takes 6 hours. Activity E takes 4.5. So 11 plus 6, this would be at 17. 11 plus 4.5, this is 15.5. And then activity F cannot start until activity D is complete. So that starts at the 17th hours, takes 7.7 to end at the 24.7 hour mark. And then activity G cannot begin until activity F is complete. It takes 4.0. And when we add 4.0 to 24.7, this ends at 28.7 hours. So that's a quick Gantt chart for it. And the nice thing about the Gantt chart is you can see which activities overlap, and you can also see which activities must begin after its predecessor is complete. So that's how you draw an AON diagram and a Gantt chart.